Hello and welcome to another show in the Shaman and the Philosopher. And today is my absolute pleasure to introduce a man whose curiosity has taken him from the front lines of cutting-edge technology to the uncharted depths of ancient mysteries. Rick Osmond is not just an author. He's a modern-day explorer of the enigmatic, blending his background as a U.S. Air Force Academy and laser electro-optics expert with a lifelong passion for the unexplained. With degrees in laser technology and years of service supporting special operations forces in radar, night vision, and surveillance system, Rick knows a thing or two about uncovering hidden truths. But it's in his
Nice.
writing where he truly shines, delving into the forgotten histories, hollow earth theories, and cryptozoology and the sprawling
Mhm.
ancient fortress of the Ohio Valley. His acclaimed book, The Graves of the Golden Bear, Ancient Fortresses and Monuments of the Ohio Valley, invite us to rethink the roots of American civilization through the meticulous research and bold hypotheses. A frequent contributor to Ancient American magazine, Rick Osmond reminds us that the past isn't buried, is waiting to be rediscovered. So please join me in giving a hearty welcome to our distinguished guest, Rick Osmond. Thank you for being with us, Rick. I just want to allow my co-host, to give a few words and we'll pass it on to you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Jason Huffman, screen name Shaman 711. I am the shaman half of the Shaman and the Philosopher. I'm on the road today over in Auburn, Alabama. That's why I've got the nice fall colors behind me. Quick note that this weekend I'm heading over to Cherokee Rock Village for some new footage of a new area for anybody that's been following my series Antediluvian Alabama. I found some individuals that have been seeing the same thing I have, and I hope to go meet them and get some new footage for Ricardo and I to throw up here on the show in the coming weeks. That's what I've got going. Find me on YouTube, X, or Rumble, and right now I'm just excited to talk to Rick. I watched Ricardo, your last interview with Rick, and I gave you guys the little list, and you heard there was quite a bit of stuff that popped out of me in that conversation where I figure we can go pretty deep with Rick, ranging all the way from Phoenicians, mercury, copper, all the way down to long distance communications amongst the natives, not only line of sight, but possibly using sound over long distances involving parabolic cliffs. I'm all in for those topics. So, Rick, welcome very much to the show.
My
Excited to
pleasure.
talk to you today, sir.
My pleasure. Where do you want to start on that list?
So, Rick, here's where where you're about episode 6, I think, Ricardo, and we've let things organically develop, and we've got a starting point that's starting to flow. It's the traditional, give us the idea of your story or what got you sitting here in front of me, but then I've kind of lasered in on Rick. Each person we've talked to, no matter what the field, be it history, be it philosophy, be it whatever, just like Ricardo is and like myself, are individuals who have put great time, effort, toil, energy, treasure into areas of knowledge, right? And putting forth areas of knowledge that the mainstream in whatever field tends to oppose for some reason. So you have an individual then passionate about putting out information that is not readily available. So it's in there. It's what is that passion? What is that word bring to mind for you? And what is it that sort of has you doing what has you here in front of me as an expert in all these fields with this knowledge that honestly you've probably had to fight to get because it's just not readily out there.
It is not
Loosely,
readily
that's
out
kind
there.
of my question, but
The first thing I have to say is
passion and purpose.
an expert. An expert. That's an interesting term. My father used to say an expert is a combination of a has-been and a drip under pressure. Expert. So expertise, on the other hand, is something you attain. And my expertise in this field, I guess, started 58 years ago. Because when I was a kid, a young teenager, I think I was 14, I'd already been to all of the historical societies in 3 counties around me. I had been taken in as a pup by the officers of each historical society because, just like today, young people don't seem interested. And I was. And I never lost it. And then when I was about 14, I became more acquainted with a couple of the old geezers in the town where I grew up, and now I'm the old geezer. But they told me the stories about these ancient fortresses. And one of them said there were 10 of these fortresses across southern Indiana, and the other one said there were 12. I still don't know the exact number. I've only found 6 of them so far. 2 of them are actually in the state literature, and the rest of them has been up to me. So, yeah, I've been at this a good long time.
Nice.
And the structure, the situation, terrain of these fortresses is such that they could see from one to the next. Each of them could see the one on the other side of them along a straight line. I'm talking a ruler straight line across the entire state of Indiana, southern end of Indiana, from a place it's called Devil's Backbone, which is a very interesting archaeological site by itself, rumored to have been the home of Prince Madoc of Wales for a good long time. And the other end is a place called Miram Bluff, or at the time in the 1830s, 40s, when they first became aware of its nature as an archaeological site, they called it Fort Astalin. And it was a very much like a Welsh hill fort, except that it wasn't all stone. Most of it was palisade, as were most of the fortresses, of the Ohio Valley. But the line of fortresses between...
Sorry, when you say Prince Madoc, we're talking about what time?
570 or so AD.
570 CE? AD?
Yeah.
So right there we have a problem. Because Rick,
Yes, we have a big
no one
problem.
here before Columbus. Yeah, you have a problem there. So
Right. And even more to the point, if it is true, and I'm pretty sure it is, then that was considered a Christian society at the time. And that negates the sovereignty that came under the papal bull of 1452 called Terra Nullius. And that is
Which was some sort of mandate for our audience members that basically said if it wasn't a Christian nation, if you were an explorer, then you had right and ordination to go in and do whatever the fuck you wanted. And
pretty
well,
much.
Columbus did, and they all did. So, but if now for our audience, if they were in fact Christian, what does that do to the whole thing, Rick?
It negates the sovereignty that came from the discovery by Columbus. Number one. So every transfer of sovereignty after that was null and void. And that is why Thomas Jefferson told Meriwether Lewis to look out for stuff that could be a threat to the sovereignty of the United States on his trip west. So anyway, that is very much an encapsulated version. I got it spelled out pretty well in the book, although the book is out of print.
Who sent Meriwether Lewis west? Just for my notes.
President Thomas Jefferson.
It was TJ. Okay.
Yeah. Meriwether Lewis lived in the White House with Jefferson for 2 years before he started west. His first stop was Pittsburgh, where he picked up the stuff he had ordered a year and a half before that, which was 20 carbine length. I think it was 28 carbine length muskets, because they were going to be in boats. He didn't want long guns, and he had a folding iron frame for a boat built. Formed, shaped exactly like a Welsh coracle, incidentally. And they could put skins on the outside of it and make it a boat real quick. And that did not go further west than the Mandan village, because the Mandans were fair-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, among them anyway. And they used coracle-shaped
typically
boats.
American. Yeah.
Well, it's typically Caucasian. But we'll make an exception for that tribe. They had their own stories about Prince Madoc, by the way. And there are other stories that mention... Go ahead. There were other stories about the Mandans having Welsh connections, including old books that they could no longer read. I've tried, failed so far to track down more information about that. But it would be very interesting. I have a name, but nobody can actually verify that the book survived. This person's cabin burned, and allegedly the book was in it, but sounds convenient.
So, Rick, I felt you taking a speculative line, and I just like to delineate because we do have lots of, academics and all to watch it. We'll call this speculative, but I'm very interested by the Thomas Jefferson, Meriwether Lewis, and where you were going with possibly what some intention was, speculatively. In that operation, naturally, here's where I'm coming from. I know vaguely of the subject that Mr. Jefferson, TJ, had a bit of a large size interest in things Native American. And I guess the narrative has always told me that was a noble interest, a preservative interest. So now I'm just curious, did I hear you yank that thread of what those two might have been up to if you were willing to just run with that for a minute?
I encapsulate that in 1 minute. Give me 3 minutes, okay?
Okay.
You have
Yes,
half an
Thomas,
sir.
hour.
Thomas Jefferson was an attorney, number one. So everything in his brain was rule of law and the verbiage of law. So the core of discovery is not an exploration. Discovery is a legal term so that you know what is there, not
Mhm.
exploring. It is discovering. And it is through discovery that you can make the land claim, which is why he sent him all the way to the coast. And he sent him with some very specific instructions in a letter that has been published. You can go find it. It's not secret or anything. He alludes to a number of things, including what I said about things that anything that might be a threat to the sovereignty of the United States. But there's a tack on to that.
Mhm.
If you find this, send it to me in a ciphered letter. Doesn't tell him what the cipher is. He tells him to get it to him, to Thomas Jefferson, by any means available, including sending the natives back to Washington with the information.
Mm.
So we know that a couple of natives went to Washington after meeting with Lewis and Clark. We don't know what to carry. However, I discerned, and this is not truly speculation, this is an educated analysis. I can tell you what kind of cipher they used, but I can't solve it because I don't have the key. And it's all in the book. So I can tell
So
you where they learned the
it,
cipher.
it it wasn't so different from what the Simpsonian ordered Emirates to do in the area of Mount Pisgah. So it is to go there and find a way to make it all disappear or make it all be like non-existent or discredit everything that regards the.
Discredit it from the official narrative through whatever means necessary.
Well, not exactly that with Jefferson and Lewis, but let me expand just a little bit.
Sure.
As I
Please.
said, Jefferson was an attorney, and he understood that the sale of the Louisiana Purchase, which the signature was in St. Louis by Meriwether Lewis, by the way, and it was not to buy the land itself. It was to the wording and everything about the law at that time said that the United States was purchasing the city of New Orleans and the legal right to be the exclusive trade partner for all of the natives within the land described in the Louisiana Purchase. And that's all it was. They didn't buy the land.
That is drastically different than yeah, wow.
Right.
No idea.
So now, getting back just a little bit, the night before Lewis and Clark and the entire Corps of Discovery left the Mandan village to continue west, Lewis put into his journal, and I have to paraphrase here because I don't have it in front of me, basically that these fair-skinned, beautiful people have been great hosts, and tomorrow morning our little fleet of boats go west, continuing the journey that we planned 10 years earlier. What? Wait, what? 10 years earlier? Yeah, 10 years earlier, not on that exact date, but almost. Lewis, Meriwether Lewis, William Clark, William Henry Harrison, Mad Anthony Wayne, and a guy by General John Wilkinson were all at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. Yeah, 1794. And
Where was that battle? Where was the location of that battle?
northwestern Ohio, and it was between, well, the Legion of the United States, the first army formed by the United States, professional army, and basically the Shawnee and Potawatomi and Miami, but they routed the Indians out of that particular place. So all these guys, including that future president, William Henry Harrison, were together there at that time, 10 years before Lewis is already leaving the Mandan village. They figured this one out 10 years earlier. And somehow or another, they managed to get Lewis in the White House for 2 years to plan it right down to the T. And the only man they lost on that trip west died of appendicitis. We think appendicitis.
With the irony of it.
Surgery my daughter had 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, Ricardo?
Yes.
Yeah, but they didn't have the capacity to work on him on the,
Oh, of course not. No,
living
yeah.
on the Missouri River at that time.
Terrible death for him in that case.
Yes. And okay, so let's go to the next topic.
Keep going.
Oh no, you tell me what you want to hear.
Jason.
I've given
Ricardo,
enough
did you
about
have
Meriwether
direction, or
Lewis.
you just
People
want me
could go
to
look for themselves, but
Absolutely.
Exactly. I like it. You're starting the questions. Okay, so here's another hole. So in all my coverage with Ricardo of the copper, all right. Now in the episode we just did with the girls at Universe Unveiled, which everybody, honestly, that's my favorite thing about the copper I've done so far. Please watch that episode if you haven't already. By the time this goes out, it'll have released. But we all keep harping on it and keep hitting around boats. We had boats. Of course, there was transoceanic travel. Ricardo did a beautiful job in his last presentation of showing the, ocean currents. We know the Gulf Stream, right? All of these things, the stones in the Azores, that contribute to the reality of someone making these transoceanic journeys in general. Here's my question. So when we start looking at particularities of these things, right? One word, one name that I have heard sprinkled around is Phoenician, right? I've heard tale of stones in the Chicago harbor, perhaps used by them, just little drops of that. So what I haven't heard anybody talk about in all this time on copper is going into any specifics about evidence for any particular group of people who might have been making these journeys. So I have the Phoenicians in my notes in general, but just anybody in that regard, any specifics you have with your wealth of knowledge.
sure. But matching up the Copper Age to the Phoenicians is a vastly different period of time. Copper Age started about in North America about 4,200 BC. A little later in the Old World. Imagine that. But the Phoenicians were 1,000 BC and later.
Okay.
So the copper carriers, if I can go that far, the mega freighters of the day probably carried 40,000 pounds of cargo. All right. So I want to say it's not a convention by any means, but if we can take the Alubrium, or however you actually pronounce that ship name, as an example, the ingots or bun ingots or oxides, either one, were shaped in such a way that they could act as ballast. But if you filled up if you filled up the ship with those, then the center of gravity becomes high and it becomes overloaded weight-wise a lot because copper is very, very dense. So consider that they were carrying other cargo along with it. Evidently something that would deteriorate in seawater because it doesn't show up in the archaeological record. You also have the idea that they probably didn't arrive in North America empty. The other part was maybe they were already North American ships and we just haven't found them yet. Maybe the people living in North America exported the stuff on their own. You won't get most of the archaeologists to accept that idea that they could not be that civilized but you find, here's where it gets very, very interesting, particularly around that time there becomes a dense reignition of haplo X amongst the population of the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence Seaway, and the Levant. So take your pick from what that means.
The bubble is right
contention is,
to the coast, on that area.
yeah. And what
From
you
St.
mentioned about
Lawrence
the
all the way
current,
up there.
what you mentioned about the currents, if you look at the North Atlantic current, it's actually a clockwise current from your point of view. It's a clockwise current that goes, say, from the Iberian Peninsula to the Azores, Canaries, etc., across to part of it, and it splits, goes to Brazil, and then it goes into the Gulf of Mexico, where the Gulf of America, my old habit, Gulf of America,
Right.
around Florida, up the coast, across Greenland, Iceland, Britain, and actually part of it branches off in the Norwegian Sea. So you have the warm waters coming in, and it's a great ride from Florida all the way back in probably 2 or 3 weeks without dipping an oar. But if you have oars or sails that you can actually tack with, you got it made. So that period of time, 4000 BC, there was a round trip that almost certainly depended upon the current in its natural state to get them around. So it was probably 3 months out, maybe 4, to cross, maybe 4 to work, and another 4 to get back, at least to the Levant. So it would be a 1-year venture, give or take. If you look at the Iliad, it was a 3-year venture. If you look at the Fistos Disk and compare it to the Iliad, it was a 3-year venture. Fistos Disk, are you familiar with that one, Jason?
Yeah.
No, I am not. Feel free to fill us in.
Sure.
Small disc, decorated on both sides. I use the word decorated because that's what the archaeologists call it. It's actually a message. It's actually a story. And it depicts ox hide ingots. It depicts human figures with a ponytail and feathers in their hair, and classic Native American profile. People in bondage, depicts different crops, different birds, and different things. But all I can tell you is just go look it up. Wikipedia has a good picture. Don't believe anything they write, but look at the picture.
Yeah. Ricardo, if you want to maybe
I'm
look
on
for
it.
an image, you're on it. While you're on it, Rick, so we're going to come back to this while he pulls up an image. Let me give something from my notes here, a thread I want to go down next that I think we lead into. All right, so when you mentioned what I thought was great sort of hypothesis or the natives, so that the natives might have been possibly shipping this copper, which was so easily harvested that you did not need necessarily any sort of large industrial, methodologies to pull it out of the Upper Peninsula, right? And it comes out pure. So you postulate, well, what if, and we love questions and fun here, the natives somehow were in charge of shipping it over, right? Instead of, okay, what you said then was the narrative as it stands, as traditional, archaeology would have it, they laugh at that, they dismiss that. All right, so my particular area of interest here in the southeast, when I find Mabilla and then I start sorting out his route, what all happened here on the ground. What I discovered was a plan was put in place by Tuscaloosa, the chief, that Rick will go into it sometime. It makes me proud to even sit here and talk about is a level of military genius, presence, and wherewithal with an invasive army that might as well been an alien UFO landing. Horses and armor and these things these people had never seen. My point is this. I got to an understanding that the narrative I'd been handed about Native Americans was just, we'll say incomplete to be nice, but borderline false, right?
There's
Borderline
no
false.
borderline. It was
I read these
completely.
DeSoto Chronicles, Rick, and the numbers, man, here in my hometown, here's what got me going out finding all this stuff everywhere. You read these chronicles and the numbers. When they're describing walking from major town to major town, they're describing in between, walking through nonstop homesteads, forests that are essentially cultivated gardens, right? Just numbers beyond imagining. And yet, as a guy who was born in this very region, Rick, right here in Montgomery, Alabama, who has come to all this knowledge by the time I'm an adult, because I myself went out to find it, the narrative that I was handed here was the same almost as we saw from any Western, propaganda movie, that they were some bare, subsisting hunter gatherer, people, right? And that they had maybe large towns, maybe large mound cultural centers. We all know Cahokia, Moundville, but past that, we're just taught bear hunter gatherers, and we're not told anywhere near these numbers that these firsthand accounts show us. So I know there's plenty to talk about there, considering the diseases brought and what that did to the numbers before European contact came back through. Um, yeah, so that's really where I wanted to start and go next after we get to what we're looking at here
Take off
is
from
the
that.
the narrative we're handed versus reality. Go ahead, Rick.
First take off. DeSoto arrived with 7 sows. Within 2 years, he had 1,200 hogs. Tell me how that happened. No,
He had 300 pigs when he landed.
no,
They
he
were
had
very
7
good.
sows. He had 7 sows that he brought from Cuba. He had 300 hogs by the time he got to the north end of Alabama, however. So my contention is the
Okay,
sows were there to bait the boars
got
that
you.
were already here. That's just my contention and speculation.
Oh, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
following you.
yeah. But if you follow the archaeologists and historians, there were no hogs in North America.
So their contention is that there were no hogs here, and what you and I listen. I know the wild hogs. I explore around here like crazy. In fact, how I found one of the biggest mounds discoveries I found was because there was a wild boar, and the first time I went to the top of the structure was to get my unarmed ass to the top away from this boar. So they're telling me that all of those are essentially descendants of whatever DeSoto brought with him. Your contention is they were already here
Right.
and then intermingled.
Yes. But if they're already
So
here, that means
what?
there was somebody here before the Spanish.
Right.
No, there weren't. There
I see.
weren't. There
I
weren't.
see.
So,
No.
but but my question is, how do archaeologists explain that? They came all pregnant?
They don't. They don't address it at all.
I see. That's a good thread. That's a good little thread to pull on right there, Rick.
Okay, well, I'll let you
I like
handle
that.
that part. Now, I want to go on my other takeoff from that discussion. Columbus
Yes,
arrived,
sir.
Santo Domingo, and he was met at sea, mile and a half out to sea, by seagoing canoes that were longer than his ships, and they were peopled by men that were half a head to 2 heads taller than any of Columbus's men. That's in Columbus's logbook. So the seagoing canoe was certainly capable of paddling across the Gulf of America between, say, Poverty Point, Louisiana, and the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, and
Most definitely. We know. Yep.
and taking that as an aside to the real story here, there have been ceramic vessels found in 38 different sites in North America, from Arizona to Florida to Wisconsin, that have tested as having cacao in them.
Having what? Sorry,
So
the audio cut
cocoa,
there.
we call it cocoa, cacao.
Cocoa.
Oh, okay.
Cacao.
Which is fairly known to exist in the United States. Lots of it.
Chocolat.
You can't grow
Yeah.
it here. It is most certainly imported. And actually, it doesn't grow in Mexico. It grows further south, to be honest. But apparently the Maya were trading it. It was probably fermented cacao, which is what the Aztecs had, which is what Montezuma drank with
Yep.
Cortez. And he drank a lot of it,
Yep.
apparently. I guess he was a drunk. Anyway,
Well, you got to get rid of the guilt of mass rape, mass pillaging,
yeah,
mass murder. You got to have something to take the edge off, Rick.
yeah,
But
human
I
sacrifice.
wonder, could it
All
could
right.
it be that those potteries were having the cacao the same way the sows were having boars by magic?
By magic, or maybe. I,
Magic.
well, here's where it
By
gets truly
magic.
interesting about that one. all the ceramic vessels matched. It was like a branding, merchandising thing. It was like the Coca-Cola bottle. You know what's in that clay pot.
Huh. Yeah.
So I'm not going to speculate anymore. That is not my area of expertise, but these facts are kind of intriguing. So back to the whole
There was a lot intriguing in there.
the whole idea that the people who came out to meet Columbus didn't even come armed.
That's what I want to hear about.
Didn't even
The
what?
Tano and the Caribs of the Caribbean were large framed, very large framed, comparatively light haired, light skinned people to the other tribe or clan or, tribes, peoples around them. And they're both pretty much extinct now. But, okay, Columbus, get back to Columbus. He arrived at Santo Domingo. One of the first things he did was torture a native for information. And the information he wanted was where to find gold. I'm sorry, this guy was in Cuba. My mistake. This guy was in Cuba. And he said, well, it's on an island 100, so many distance away in a creek. And I want to know two things about this conversation. How did they convey this information to a native that did not speak Spanish? How did this native from the island of Cuba know about a creek on an island 150 miles away that had gold? And they did go and get it. They're not sophisticated, civilized, or smart, but how did he know about the geology, geography, and all that stuff?
Right.
So that there are a whole bunch of things
that they
about
found the only sage of the island.
What
apparently
jumped out for me
is magic again.
before we pick another thread, magic is everywhere in America. If you haven't noticed, this is one magical fucking place, isn't
Yes,
it?
indeed.
Things just appear out of nowhere and disappear out of nowhere. Listen, on that last, thank you very much for your response to the stuff on DeSoto. So what stuck out for me was the people that came out to meet Columbus. It sounds like I have yet another firsthand account of some inordinately sized yet well proportioned people. So all of the DeSoto chronicles, every chronicler pretty much was in unison about the fact that Chief Tuscaloosa was inordinately sized and well proportioned. The descriptions they gave, their terminology was a vara. A vara was roughly what we'd call a yard, and they said Tuscaloosa was around a vara, right? Half a vara to a vara, taller than everyone else around. And that sounds kind of precisely about the language that was used by Columbus about these individuals that came out to meet him.
Yeah, well, a half a yard would be 18 inches. So that would be a head and a half to two heads, depending on how small you
And
were. And
yes,
probably the average height of Columbus's crew was 5'4" to 5'5". That's just the
Sure.
time and the age of Europeans at that period. So
And
if
7 to 8 feet. I mean, is that
yeah, it's entirely believable to me. And
yes?
it's also entirely believable to most of the native tribes today. They just don't know what happened.
Look, I'm 6'5", Rick. Okay, I'm 6'5". That is a perfectly. I know friends of mine that I have to look up to. Okay, black individuals, white individuals. Not
Yeah,
tied to anything.
yeah,
Okay,
it's not a racial
that
thing.
so for me. So why is the narrative so strongly fighting against the fact that these giants, right? They're not talking 20-foot long inordinate things. You're talking about a 7.5, 7 foot, roughly 10 inches taller than I am, right? Well proportioned, larger than your average man people. Why are they so hell bent on telling me these were lies? Why do they want to discount all these firsthand accounts of what, to me, at 6'5", are perfectly reasonable things to imagine?
if I can introduce this, you are all Crick is for sure familiar with the Magellan expedition and Pigafetta, right? So if you go to the Pigafetta report when he disembarked in Patagonia, his head was slightly above their waist. Slightly above their waist, right?
Right.
And that's what the
this is
illustrations of the day show too. They're twice as
ex-
tall as the Europeans.
he looked like a child of theirs. Like his size when he depicted himself were these people or the artist that did. I don't know if it was Pigafetta that did the drawings. He was like a
Yes.
child, right? So this couple that came to greet us was just enormous. So if you put a descendant and mingling and so on, you'll get to the north of the United States and you get people that are just 7.5 feet tall instead of being like
9.
12, 13, 15,
Yeah.
yes, or whatever. I'm not good with the American method.
The
And
conversion. Yeah.
it's not
But
just in North America either. If you look at, for instance, Roman history, Emperor Maximinius was,
I'm gonna be out of shot for a second,
sure,
guys, but you're in my ears and I'm still in
yeah,
yours.
Maximilian was huge too, so he was
yeah,
enormous.
Maximinius was recorded as 8 feet 4 inches. And if you take that as Roman feet, that's a little shorter than what we think of as 8 feet 4 in English. 16 inches shorter, but still a very tall individual. And according to the accounts talking about Tuscaloosa and many of the others, including the Taino and the Caribs, they weren't just
Yes.
big;
Yes.
they were muscular. They were
Yes.
impressively
Right.
like scary,
Eyes the
so to the
size of
Spanish.
oxen.
Yeah, like that.
Just they called Tuscaloosa the most handsome, well proportioned. They use words like beautiful, absolutely.
It's a shame they didn't have Miss Universe back then. He would have won.
Right.
Or photograph. But
But Rick, before
so the
before we
whole
dive further into this, do you want just before it's lost? Do you want
The
yeah?
image.
Do you want just explain to us what you're talking about the Fistos disc
Fistos
that is
Disk.
now
Okay,
on the yeah.
You were going to explain this to me, and he went to great effort and pulled it up, and we
okay.
almost
So
derailed it. So let's go here.
Fistos Disk, Minoan object. Sorry, it's associated with Minoans. It may predate the Minoans by quite a bit. It predates Linear A and Linear
Okay.
B. They consider it, and I say they, I'm talking archaeologists, anthropologists, they consider it to be probably writing, but they think that it wasn't sophisticated enough to convey the story. And I contend that they're
Right.
not trying very hard. And I don't know how well we can zoom in on it, but if you follow it, it's actually a spiral on each side. So the beginning
Yes.
point might be the
Okay.
center, or the center might be the end point.
Ricardo, just to make sure here at this picture, I don't know what the audience may be seeing, but I'm only seeing the top half of this disc.
Oh, I was zooming. Can you see it all now?
And on my end, and it may be because I'm on mobile, you're only on the bottom half of my screen.
Well,
I can, so maybe zoom out some.
from it's all zoomed out. So from my screen, I'm recording the whole disc.
Never mind then. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So if you start with the center as the beginning point of this story, and
Hmm.
you follow and it's been a long time
Spiral.
since I follow the spiral, it tells a story. And my contention, my interpretation of it is that it's telling the story of an outward bound journey to acquire copper ingot oxides,
Hmm.
because it definitely portrays ingot oxide
Where was this object discovered?
in the Crete, Minoan.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is not a piece from the Americas. This is a piece from the old world.
Right. Describing, you're postulating a journey to the old world. I mean,
Uh,
the new world.
yeah, a journey from the old world to the new world and back. And then I think that
Right.
the other side describes the return journey and who they encountered and what the conditions were and what, not, it looks like they were trading for wheat, or maybe they were exporting the wheat because it's on the outgoing side, my interpretation, of course. But then they were bringing oxides back. So if you look at some of the portrayed images on that disc, it's easy to read into it that each of the profiles of people could be related to what we think we know about both North American tribes as well as Picts, Brits, and a few others.
Yeah, what led me to believe, and I'm going back to this screen. What led me to believe that this was a piece when I first saw it from North America is depictions like this. So I'm not sure if you can see, but it is clearly
A turkey.
looks like indigenous people. You see a lot of these symbols here. Another one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one, a mohawk. Right.
Yeah, and here, so it doesn't look like most. I believe archaeologists will say, "Oh, that's a helmet," or with a top, but it doesn't look to me because you have this without it, and even the facial is different. The aspect of the face, the position of the nose, the angles, they are completely different from this one or this one, for instance, like here to this one here.
Yeah, they're all slightly different.
Oh, I
Actually,
see.
I
Yeah,
think there are
yeah.
two identical, but the rest of
My
them are slightly
screen's
different.
cut, but I finally see what you're talking about with this mohawk.
Yeah,
I just now finally got that on my screen. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you have this, for instance, that I don't know, but I don't think this is
Yeah, I don't
an
know how to
old world
interpret a whole
symbol.
bunch of it, but
Yeah,
I
it looks like
I
an
contend
effigy
that
mound.
it's telling a story. And that
Mhm.
side, I think the other side has two depictions of oxides on it. But
Let me see if I have the other side here. Yes, I do have the other side. Let me just share it too, since we share this side.
but the difficulty in
Here
conveying
it
this
is, the
information.
other side.
Yeah, there's an oxide.
So you call this is the oxide, right? Here.
It looks like it's shaped like a skin. That one's a little off, but
Exactly.
there's another one that's actually
Yeah,
better.
a little bit off. Let me see if
There,
I
I
find it.
don't see it right here, but I have to go over it.
Oh, we'll do
There's several
this.
depictions of hides, just not the oxide ingot.
Yes, another one.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is hide.
So these symbols, while you're looking, if I may ask a question, these symbols, they have no translation or understanding in the
correct,
culture in which they were located. So in Crete.
correct. Yeah, it's the only known example of this
Okay,
iconography.
so they have no way of saying thank you. That's the correct way to say it. Excellent. So they don't really know
And
where this thing came from, only where they found it.
and if you consider this a universal symbol because it's depicted it right on the other side of the disc, he also appears. It's like giving you the direction of reading, like from the center, read this way because you can see also
Right,
Yeah, I
these
see that.
arrows.
I see
These
that.
and
I
arrows
do.
I think
Oh, I
also
do. Oh,
appear.
yes, and yes,
You see,
yeah.
and
I
here,
do, Ricardo.
So it's like there's a sentence break, and you keep reading in that direction, or a different part of the journey. There are also several icons that resemble like flowing water. You can
like
see
this
fish.
one.
You can see a lot of things. Yeah, that one looks like flowing water.
And the fish, I found several of them.
Do we know any archaeological context to where to the area around this? I mean, is there any other stuff that tells us anything about where this was found? You know what I mean? When they found it, is there any other archaeological context that was found along with this?
Um, it's older than everything else they found.
Was it on a shipwreck?
No. It was found on a land excavation,
Okay, thank you.
and it was under the floor
And
of
older
a.
than everything else there.
Yeah, uh, memory
There's a
serves.
fish
It was under the floor of a temple.
It's intriguing.
under the floor.
Yeah. So
Well, yeah, and so they're hiding secret knowledge, right? Knowledge of transoceanic journeys goes under the temple floor. What else went under temple floors? If you believe in lore, Ricardo, like the Templars, right? You know, they had secret knowledge supposedly under Solomon's temple or wherever they were in the Holy Land that related to Atlantean, you know, antediluvian civilization, technology potentially. So that's a theme right there for sure that I see in this disc. That it harkens back to things of the past that would not be readily acceptable or not want to be known, so they hide it in holy places.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
I remember this.
one of the reasons I asked Ricardo about this disc, because I knew he'd pull it up because he's good, is that it conveys the idea that there are writing systems we simply don't know how to read. we don't know how to approach it, let alone read it. And now I'm going back to well beyond the Fistos Disk. Let's go back 40,000 years because it was on your list. There is a
Absolutely. Rick, keep going. Just this is a note for you and I here. I've got a piece of pottery Ricardo knows that I found along with all the other stuff. It's native of some sort. It has a script on it that is not to me or anyone I've showed it to readily identifiable. So I would love to get a picture to you to put your experienced eyes and just see if it echoes anything.
sure. Uh, Ricardo has my
Continue.
email. So 40,000 years ago, people were painting things in caves. And it wasn't,
Yes.
like the aurochs and the horses and all that stuff. They were actually using symbols. And there's an anthropologist from Canada. Her name is Genevieve Petzinger. And she cataloged all the symbols that she could find in Europe. And she found 32 different symbols that appear in various caves in Europe. And then she compiled, not directly, but compiled the symbols that had been reported, cataloged by other anthropologists in caves around the world. And she devised a system of identifying subsets. So the 32 symbols that appear in Europe have all the symbols from all the other caves around the world. The 19 that appear in North American caves are subsets of the European symbols from 40,000 years ago. So that conveys to me that 40,000 years ago, people were conveying knowledge across the oceans between North America and Europe 40,000 years ago in writing or ways of writing. Two of the symbols that
Clear
appear
sign of
I
in,
hear.
diffusion.
yes,
Continue, Rick.
without doubt, a sign of diffusion. Two of the symbols that appear in the European set appear in the North American set and nowhere else. One of those symbols, I am certain, is depicting salt, where to find a salt deposit.
That.
And if you look at the Morton salt box today, the lines of the rain at a slant are that symbol, mirror image, but it's basically still the same symbol. So,
Mm.
40,000 years of conveying
So
meaning in symbology.
yep. I'm gonna probably get us off track, but I want to go further in this 40,000 number because if for the audience's sake, I had watched Rick's former interview and he mentioned salt as a 40,000 year traded commodity. So when I heard him mention it again to us now, that sticks in my ear. And the salt interests me. I have recently become all of us have become to believe that potentially the government and all the health advice they have given us during our lifetimes has probably not been aimed at our best interest. One of those things that are labeled and thrown at us is salt. You know how terrible it is for us. I'm of the mind that I think they have us walking around salt deficient on purpose. And, I ask the audience to just ask themselves one thing. Whenever you go to the hospital for any reason whatsoever, what's the first thing they give you before they even diagnose you? Salt water, right? What are we? We're walking bags of salt water. So salt is a really critical commodity to maintaining the human body. And I contend the human spirit and consciousness at a good level. So the fact that salt was can be linked to this 40,000 year number is something I'm just anxious to see if you want to dive further into.
Before Rick says anything, let me just clarify this. We all know that there was a time, and it's still being pushed forward, there is the word cholesterol, right? And at least in Europe, cholesterol is pushed as a result of salt. So, sorry, as a result of fat. I'm sorry, as a result of fat, eating fat, right? So I dove into it and I realized the problem here is not fat, although excessive fat can cause it, but it's not fat. The problem is very simple. You have two types of salt. You have mineral salt and you have sea salt. In mineral salt, that is what it pushes us to consume, is only made of three elements: sodium chloride, glass, and silica. Okay? These are the ingredients in mineral salt. In sea salt, You have the same 88 oligo elements that you find in your own blood. That's why if someone is dying, right, you can create a saline solution for loss of blood or whatever. You can create a saline solution and save the person's life. If you create a saline solution with mineral salt, you're going to kill him. That's the difference.
Yes.
That's a huge difference.
Brilliant.
Here, right? So,
Ricardo, I'm going to want some links and
sure.
something on that
So,
later. That is perfect.
What mineral salt causes to you and why it is a cause of cholesterol and all of these diseases is because when you ingest it, your organism cannot dissolve completely the glass and the silica.
The other shit.
So it goes into your veins and scratch them from inside. What is the mechanism that our bodies has to heal the veins? It's called cholesterol. So the more you scratch them, the more the body will heal, and that creates the coagulus inside your veins. It's not about fat; it's about the body healing, trying to heal himself by the damage of
is
mineral
not made
salt.
of fat. That's right.
Dude, fat is good for me. That's what I know. I eat slaughtered calves from the farm. I mean, slaughtered cows, right? I know that my brain requires fat. My
Well, your
eyeballs
brain
require
also
fat. My
requires
body,
salt.
it's
That's a big thing that when you brought
correct.
up the health, if
And
you're low
sea
sodium,
salt.
well, yeah, sea salt's the best. But if you're low sodium, your nervous system stops firing without sodium.
This is motivation for a people who are wanting to, keep us under some sort of large scale influence, i.e., a social matrix, keep us far away from our powers and potentials. Naturally, they would want us walking around sodium deficient.
But then
I don't.
they create
Go ahead.
these sidelines like these holistic movements that are not holistic at all, saying you should take Himalayan salt. Himalayan salt. Well, Himalayan salt is mineral salt. It has one or two more elements that give it its color, but it's still mineral salt, and it will still hurt your veins from the inside, right?
Yes.
So there are
and so
all
will
of these
glacier
fruits
milk.
that are yeah. So just
I knew the salt rabbit hole was there for a reason. This is great, guys.
But it's still the most time of a traded commodity in the history so far, history of our species. And it was almost certainly sea salt to begin with that was traded inland. And the Bedouins still do that on camelback. It's not just
It was
tradition.
primary.
Yeah.
That's what we're establishing, and that's why I like the salt. It was absolutely primary. Ricardo, your information about mineral versus sea salt. The reason that sticks for me is I have started the past, let's call it, couple of months, introducing sea salt into my system first thing in the morning. Right underneath the tongue, small amounts. Right, I might even repeat it during the day because I've had problems throughout my whole life with my system due to a heat stroke when I was early on. I get dehydrated, and I have noticed verifiable for me evidences of me working better having introduced the sea salt into my system. So thanks for verifying that for me,
look,
Ricardo, is all I wanted to say.
And Rick might add something to what I'm going to say. One of the biggest trades that existed in the Northern Sahara was done by a civilization that no one knows the name, that were the Garments. So the Garments controlled the salt that was extracted in the Atlas Mountains by what they call the Ataracians, that are probably descendants from residents from communities of the former known Atlantis. That's why they call the mountains Atlas when they migrated, right? And they probably ended up in the eye of the Sahara after the catastrophe because they might have an arbor right in front of it, although it's far from the sea today. So when the Romans decided, look, these Garments, these people are taking all of the money from this trade of salt. We are just here as the receivers of all of this. And so they decided we are going to take the business from them because we want this business. We want this trade line, right? And so like Tuscaloosa, one of their main representatives said to the Romans when they were right at the standstill, he said, okay, I will take you there, right? And so they took us by sea and took months in the journey, keeping delaying them and causing problems and so on, and in order for them to never find a way into the Ataracians that were the ones picking up the salt. A people that the chronicles say had no dreams. So their traumas were so huge they don't have a dream. That's what the chronicles say, right? They were very strange people, completely different from all others, completely isolated on their own and their own culture. And so what happened is the Roman general that I can't remember the name, after months of seeing himself being fooled and continuously fooled and more problems, and the guy keep fooling them while taking them to the origin of the salt by the
Right?
African coast. He decides all of that is a fraud, and so he gets back, and it's finally when the Romans decide, okay, they are never gonna tell us, so we were just gonna obliterate this society. So the
Mm.
the city that exists was found not so long ago, but it's the only sign that we have of this huge civilization that were the garments that controlled the trade of salt and many other things in the Sahara, in the Fizan region of the Sahara, and they are the responsibles for eradicating a species, and I'm calling them a species because to me, I believe that they are Homo erectus, and I explain why they were Homo erectus, the ones that created all the art we found in the Fizan area, like the swimming cave, because they got stuck there by changes in the environment. It used to be a green, full of water place, and it got drier and drier, and they got smaller and smaller, and the garments refer to them.
Ricardo, give me again for me and please in the audience geographic location.
Fizan, the
Just where are
Fizan
we?
area of the Sahara.
The Sahara. Thank you.
Western
So
Sahara.
exactly. So
Thank you, Rick.
you can see this in the academia and the Institute for Natural Philosophy Edu page. There is a paper
Great.
there called
Ricardo, make a note
Cave
here.
Dwellers of the East Sahara.
Let's get a link to that if we
Sure.
can in the video, okay, when we put it
So
out.
what they describe these creatures to be is like subhumans that run faster than 4 chariot horses. And the only creature in our history of evolution that can actually move more efficiently and run more efficiently than Homo sapiens is Homo erectus. They were built to run and to walk. Their skeleton was morphologically adapted to that, and they didn't. They say that they speak by clicks and clicks of the tongue and like animal sounds. That's how they communicate. So they strangle them into that area more and more, and eventually they kill them all because the others that survived starved to death, or they didn't have anything to hunt or whatever. So this is all a very interesting. I'm sorry, I diverged this, but I think it's a very interesting relation between the salt and all the importance of these communities and its consequences.
But you also mentioned the Richat structure in Mauritania, the Eye of the Sahara.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yes.
Salt.
so
Our buddy Jimmy Corsetti's favorite candidate for sort of the center of the lost civilization, the
well,
Richat structure.
at best it was an outlying colony, but
Yeah, I don't quite subscribe as strongly as he does either to
Yeah,
what that
because the
thing
Eye of
is.
Sahara is basically a mine. That was
Right.
it probably
it is
salt because
today.
after
Yeah,
go on, Rick.
it is strictly a geological structure, and for years they thought it was a kimberlite pipe, and they thought they were going to find fortunes in diamonds, and that's why you'll find Kaiser and all the other De Beers, all of them have explored there. They haven't found a single rock yet, but it is the right geology. It should be there. It's kind of like, let's say, and I'm going to divert completely, guys. Let's say the North American Superior Rift, which is why the copper in Michigan has mercury in it.
Mm.
You're welcome.
Rick, sir, man, not a minute and a half ago, I looked over at my notes going, all right, I need to get us back to Mercury.
I'm
And
not
look at you,
psychic,
sir.
but it's time. The North American Superior Rift 3 billion years ago opened up the continent just a little bit, and a whole bunch, and I'm talking probably 2 billion tons of copper squirted up through the crack. It didn't all make it to the surface, but it squirted up through the crack. And someplace in the middle of Lake Superior today, there is still a wall of nearly pure copper, 40, 80 feet tall and 18 feet thick. pure copper. The amount that was on the Keweenaw Peninsula and on Isle Royal, and by the way, the wall would be between those 2 points somewhere. We think has extracted, the figures vary depending on who's doing the research and calculation, but somewhere between 100 million pounds and 120 million tons. So that much copper
Jeez.
extracted from some, you'll find the figure 5,000 pits in the archaeological, but if you talk to the people who've lived there all their lives, it's well over 15,000 between the two places, Keweenaw and Isle Royal. And
Just right there in that small geographic location, that much copper. That's like all that was mined in the old world and Asia or something, if I
it's
remember
far
right.
more.
Rick,
But the real point is, it's the only place on the planet where you can extract pure copper from the ground. The rest of it is ore that has to be refined and cracked and smelted and cleaned up by
Right.
all kinds
That is
of
the
means.
key.
found
That is the key.
they found float copper in Ukraine now, Rick.
Yeah, tiny little pieces. Yeah,
Yeah.
pebble size.
Yeah, it's purity.
And he has
It's
some
purity.
more impurities.
Go ahead, Ricardo.
Sorry, Jason, go on.
No, I was just staying on the mercury, keeping us there. As he said, it's purity, right? And that purity brings us back to why, for our audience, why mercury was a point of interest for me is the fact that the mercury is in this copper, right, is due to how pure it is. But then we're able to use the fact that this mercury is in this copper to potentially explore other findings around the world where copper has been found containing mercury. And this is sort of the only way that happens. And the only way it got to the old world is if they didn't use heat to process it, as the natives over here do, using cold hammering,
Right.
i.e.,
But
mercury interest.
even annealing the copper after you cold hammer it will extract the mercury from it, or I should say, release the mercury from it. So anytime you expose it to heat over 500, 513, I think it is. No, it's not even that high. The mercury evaporates.
Yeah, around 500,
So,
500 centigrade. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that the nuggets, the initial extraction from the earth copper has mercury in it means that it was formed completely in the earth under high pressure and then moved up through the crust. As soon as you heat it up, that mercury escapes. So anything that was refined, annealed, exposed to any heat would not have the mercury we find in the raw nuggets, or at least it wouldn't have very much. But the amount that you find at all in the raw nuggets surprised the Dickens out of the testing facility in Sweden. They had never seen mercury
because
in copper.
naturally it should not be there.
Yeah, they never
Correct.
seen the lab. The lab they were. How is this possible?
Yeah,
Right, that's just it. The processes and the natural qualities of mercury tell me that the fact that this copper is here as it is, the mercury just shouldn't be there, period.
well, there were other amazing properties as far as the lab, not just this lab, every lab that has been exposed to it. The initial purity. They never see copper that pure in nature. To get 99.9%, they have to use electrolysis to separate the copper from the background.
So when it comes to the formation of this exceptionally pure copper pocket we've been talking about in the UP, give me just an idea of geologic time. What is the story officially on about when this formed?
3 billion years ago.
Holy shit. Okay, so let me go with why I'm asking this.
But having said
Okay,
that, having said that,
go.
that would make it the youngest pocket of copper on the planet.
and relevant here, Jason, and Rick will
Okay,
help
look.
me.
So if I understand correctly, so far, my learning about this copper these past few months, much of it, not only is it exceptionally pure, as you say, but much of it is relatively easily accessible. It is fairly near the surface in
Or on the
general
surface.
terms.
Yeah, much of it at that time, 4,000 BC, they picked it up off the surface. They didn't start mining it until
Okay,
probably
so
2500 BC.
So here's where my mind is going, Rick, and let's just run with this. All right, my research leads me down to I've done a lot of studying with the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. I've done a lot of following, Randall Carlson's work, right? Mark Young, the scientist who's working on the comet impact hypothesis. My research has, I told you about the rocks. I found rocks, quote unquote, that I believe are evidence of a high heat, high energy event in our ancient past, i.e., air burst from this event. A few months back, Mark Young published paper where over here in Louisiana, they have found the particles necessary in indentations in the ground to call those craters from air bursts or evidence thereof. Right? I know from Randall Carlson that in this area of Michigan, at the time, maybe not, we had glaciers moving all over in this 3 billion year period, but certainly in the Younger Dryas, I had impacts happening on these ice sheets, creating floods the size that you could not imagine, washing over this landscape, i.e., in this time since the geologist, as you told me, said this copper formed, I have had massive amounts of force and change taking place right here across this landscape. Why is this copper still sitting on top of the ground?
Because all those forces scrape the ground off the top of the copper.
Or did the copper get there more recently than they're telling me?
No. It's because
No,
the movement of the
because
glaciers.
they also mine. They've also done modern mining of the same copper veins, going way deep. So, and Younger Dryas, you're right. There was ice there at that time. There was a lot of ice, 1.5 to 2 miles of ice
So that,
on top of that
thank you.
peninsula.
That's what I was thinking.
And by
that-
4,000,
So that could explain then why it's on the surface, because the ice would have been dragging and churning
No,
and
the
all
ice,
that jazz.
the ice reveal it because why
Yeah.
it's scraping over
well,
the
it
rock.
also moved a lot of it
right?
further south because the progression of the glacier did break off pieces and move them further south. You can find a little bit of the what they call the float copper, the loose chunks, anywhere from pebble size to the size of the trailer I'm in, very far
I
down.
saw a picture of that. Yeah, big pieces.
So you have these two guys. There is the piece that the good people from the AAPS set out to protect, this huge piece of copper. These two guys are with metal detectors. They just bought a mine that it's more expensive to extract the copper than to sell it at the point. So they bought the land, and they are with metal detectors thinking we are going to find huge pieces of copper, and just two of us, we're going to make money because we don't have any operation going on, right? So they were with the metal detectors, and they were like from where you are to 3 or 4 trees away. So they were like 30 feet away from one another or something like that. I don't know the measures. And they both find at the same time, the machine starts beeping at the same time, right? Oh, I find copper. And the other guy, yes, I find copper too. And so when they start scraping to reveal the copper, it's one piece with 28 tons of copper. It's just one slab,
Yeah.
right? They're both on top of the same slab of copper at the same time.
Well, there's a photograph.
More.
Yeah, there's a photograph of I think it's 22 people sitting on this piece of copper.
So there's more copper in that piece than in the whole extraction of Cyprus, right?
Yes.
Of course, the old world was here. Rick, you talked about the distinction between the purity and the ore, right? And Ricardo has broken down for me the processes and the ramifications of having to smelt this shit over and over again, stripping forests, stripping trees, looking for sources of heat for the smelting. Now, when I picture all of that being the copper industry to the known world, and you sit here and describe to me these chunks of absolutely pure copper the size of a damn bus,
Yeah.
I cannot believe that a copper culture, a copper age, did not find some of
Well,
this
if you
copper.
remember what
And
Rick
there's more
said,
to it than just the fuel to do the smelting. You also had other products, minerals that were used as flux to remove the impurities.
Correct.
So you were mining more
You
than
had to
just
harvest
copper
other
ore.
stuff
Yeah.
just to make it work. Now, with all of that going on, and the whole thing, my history books tell me they label it. It's so big and massive, a copper age. When they had their only source for this material was so fucking hard to find, was so hard to acquire, took so many resources. And you're telling me it's sitting on top of the ground over here,
Yeah.
more so than they can make it for anything over there?
Not just is it sitting on top of the ground, it's a lot of it sitting on top.
And all it requires is something we already had. We've got boats, boss. Also, we've got transoceanic currents that let us do it in 4 months. And yet I can't ask if this was something that actually happened,
This is where
because
the
every
archaeologist
alarm bell in
jumps
my
in.
head.
This is where the archaeologist jumps in and says, but they couldn't navigate. Yeah, right. Okay. So why were they watching the
The
stars for
current, the
7,000
current.
years if they weren't learning to navigate?
Yeah, thank you. Archaeoastronomy.
Yeah. So
Who was you were talking about the links? The links, I think, was this you in your video? The links on ships
yeah,
that
a
they'd
chain.
use between you'd hold up to the moon and the yes,
Yeah. So
the
almost
navigational chain.
every shipwreck you find before about 1750, and a few after that, you'll find a length of chain made of gold, mainly because gold does not tarnish in seawater. And you'll find that the lengths of these chains are all the same size, and that my contention, my speculation, informed speculation, is that it was used as a navigation tool to do what they call
Hmm.
celestial navigation, or the method. If you go look at Bowditch's book about navigation, celestial navigation, he calls it the method of lunar distances, where you take this chain or some other tool and you measure the angle between the moon and a fixed star. The fixed star would be one that you have in your almanac, by the way. And you could
Hmm.
do it by holding up the chain, counting the lengths. It's that fast. And you have the angle between the moon and your fixed star. You look up on your table what that means as far as longitude. Okay, this is the part that the archaeologists, anthropologists, map makers, everybody said they couldn't do this. It's like, yeah, they can. And here's how they
Yeah,
did.
Rick,
Yeah,
but they would tell to you
so
immediately,
intriguing.
Rick, yes, you're saying all that, but how did they know what time it is to do the exact same analysis at the exact same time every day to see what
Okay,
longitude they were
this
going? So
almanac
how do
also
you answer
tells
that?
you, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it also tells you to look at the swan and find the angle of the tail versus the head on the swan, and it will tell you what time it is because of its angle to the
So no
horizon.
watch needed. No watch
Yeah,
needed.
the only requirement is being able to see the sky.
You know, and what for all of our human history, which we can already say as modern, whatever, Homo sapiens as we are, let's give it 300,000, even though we're starting to push that in some areas, right? All they had was the sky at night, you know, day, but at night, that was their show. There was no TV outside of the storyteller around the fire, right?
Well, in the cave
Naturally,
paintings,
they
that
knew how
was
it worked. The what?
the cave paintings. The cave paintings portrayed their prey, and it was a training manual. But over here on the other end, it portrayed a star map, and it was also a training manual.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you follow Rick's thought on this since the beginning of this program, he was talking about people being here in the 400s CE, and probably even he can go even further back. But if you had these people here going around and knowing the territory and taking an indigenous guy leading him to, well, let me show you the area, right? You see these walls of copper that at that moment it didn't mean anything to him,
Walls,
but it's
exactly.
on the Chronicle. So in Europe, when they start starting into the metallurgical age, there is somewhere in some chronicles there is written, we've seen walls of this metallic yellow material and all everywhere in the
El
ground.
Hang
Dorado.
on,
I
what
see.
does
Is this where
Plato
we're going?
describe?
Yeah.
Plato described a wall of copper.
Exactly.
So,
So where is the copper? We
And
know where it
North
is.
America is the key to the lost
So we know
civilization.
where it
no,
is. We're
North,
not going to tell
here,
anyone where it is,
here's
and we're
my
going there and
contention.
get it.
North America is Atlantis.
Yes, mine too. That's what I'm on. That's why when you watch my series Antediluvian Alabama, I'm walking you through ruins.
Okay, if you look
100%,
at
bro.
Poverty Point, Louisiana, it has
Yes.
7 concentric rings. They've been cut in two by the Mississippi
Hmm.
River now, but
We should say full of alignments to the stars and the heavens that you would have trouble doing today with our technology. So yes,
right,
they could read the skies.
and
Continue,
and
Rick.
and evidence, very clear evidence of copper processing at Poverty Point.
Hmm.
So my contention is North America, maybe not Poverty Point as the capital, Poseidon. It was
Yep.
the capital had a name, Poseidon. Atlantis was the continent. It's not an island, it was a continent, and Plato said so. You find Phoenician and other anchors
Right.
in Tampa Bay, stone anchors. Some of them precede
Look at that.
Phoenician by probably 6,000 or 7,000 years. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it is my contention that
No,
we're not looking at it right. We, academia, certainly are not looking at it right.
we lose you.
No, I'm here.
There you are. Okay, great. I'm loving where you're going. In fact, Ricardo, I want to add a tag here. I'm going to give a shout out to our buddy Mound Lore on X. And here's why. What he started is almost he covers the mound culture, mound building culture. He covers it quite well. I recommend, check out his work if you haven't already, right? We do not know who precisely his identity is. We don't even, it seems to be very academic, right? Anyhow, I love the account. He, quite tongue in cheek, one day, I think, towards me as we were in dialogue, posited, okay, so what about Cahokia as Atlantis, right? And again, it was a wink and a nod. He was sort of half joking. But what I'm seeing here, Rick, is, and what I think we can see the more we dive into this mound building culture, are plenty of evidences that if one wanted to, right, one could see correlations between what has been described as Atlantean civilization and much of what we identify as the mound building culture.
Yeah, I concur. And the mound
Hmm.
building culture, as we date it, goes back to about 3,800 BC as a start in Watson Break, Louisiana.
Watson break.
Yeah, but there are older features for sure. That's just the oldest that the archaeologists will accept. Getting back to Cahokia,
Yeah.
however,
I,
I'm going to
oh, cool. All right.
dovetail a whole bunch of stuff here. Stay with me. It's contentious,
Mhm.
and I'm okay with that.
Okay.
600 BC,
I'm gonna sit back and listen.
600 BC, 587 or so BC is when the Ark of the Covenant disappears from history. That's also when the Phoenicians were in operation across the Atlantic. And I don't care who contends that they never made it. My contention is that they crossed the Atlantic. They were also well acquainted with the Hebrews of the day. In fact, they worked with them very closely, traded with them often, completely. They each, Phoenician and Hebrews, had colonies all the way around the Med and even up into the British Isles.
Polonies, let me just,
Yeah, colonies or missions, if you want to put it in the case of the Hebrews, because they were.
Oh, colonies. Colonies.
Yeah.
I understood polonies. So
Oh,
I was complicating it
colonies.
much further.
They were colonizing. The Phoenicians were doing it as a trade network. The Hebrews were probably doing it as a trade network and proselytizing. At any rate, they had interactions on a great many levels. If they hired the Phoenicians to help them get their goods out of Jerusalem before it fell to the Babylonians, then they might have transported some of the relics to places where they thought no one would ever find them, like, say, Cahokia, which they then proceeded to keep building a hill on top of it. It started out as a stone structure. We know that. Even the archaeologists accept that. There is a stone structure at the center of that giant mound. Vince Barrows, with whom you're both acquainted, used to live right next to that mound, or close enough he'd go over there for a walk about every day.
You're muted,
Back
Jason.
in,
Yeah, my X notifications are nothing but Vince Barrows and archaeologists talking to Vince Barrows at the
yeah.
moment. Quite familiar. Yes, go
And
ahead.
so before he got onto the Pisgah relics, he was all about Cahokia, and some of the best research I have ever seen, incidentally.
Hmm.
That mound has been rebuilt, not rebuilt, that's not the right word, added to dozens of times. And each time it had a different color of clay in layers, maybe maybe just a little bit, but they covered the entire thing. Here's where it gets really interesting. Not a scrap of organic material between the layers. No grass, no nothing. Either they cleaned it all off or it was added before anything could grow. Different colors, very discernible layers. Possibly even if you expanded it, if you took it off in each layer, you might even find images. We can't know because they won't let us do any of that. but Vince lived there close enough he could photograph the layers. So he's got evidence that it's in different colored layers. There are a couple of layers in there that are nowhere within 150 miles of Cahokia. So it was being transported in, enough of it to cover a giant mound, by the way, the largest mound known, in different colors of clay at different times. So this was a problem of populous organization, division of labor, provisioning for tons. We're talking probably 5 figures of people to do it in any, short time, which is what's evidenced because there's no organic material. Vince did like 385 pages of analysis on this. I think there are 3 copies. I'm proud to say I have one of them.
You have one, of course.
Yeah, God bless Vince Barrows. I'm not, I've only understood the hints of his Cahokia research. I haven't looked at it deeply, but just as you say, enough to know that for whatever people may or may not think of it, the man is putting some serious effort and toil into what he's putting forth to us. It's
and
wonderful.
Clear logic. That's much clearer than other people. Guys, I need a minute.
It is.
Sure.
Please do your thing, Rick.
I'll be right back.
Sure.
So, Ricardo, do you want to take a note to edit here, or do you want to keep rolling and so you don't have to mess with editing?
No, we'll see. What I was going to add here is that one of the most things that these archaeologists that are criticizing or talking to Vince Barrows,
yes,
they don't know that he was for several years at the head of an archaeological association, and that's how we got access. I can't barely see you, Jason. You're completely off screen. There you go. He had access to all of these sites, museums, these pieces, because he had that credential. So he is not an archaeologist, right? But he's learned more than enough in order to be able to perform everything that he did in terms of research, in terms of protocol, in terms of analysis, and how deep he went into his research.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, no matter what anyone has to say about any of the things, the hypotheses that Vince is putting forward, one thing I don't think you can argue with is that he has a wonderfully uncanny grasp on these topics, be it from, searching Smithsonian records to actually being in the field and documenting these things. He definitely has the time logged and the experience to be validated, in these discussions, and he exhibits that no matter what you think about what he's putting forth. Vince is, I recommend everybody go check out what Vince is doing. Find him on X. So as we're taking our break here, Ricardo, this is a wonderful conversation, man. Look, I'm having a thought. I'm having the same thought we had yesterday with George. We had our episode with George. I forget how to say his last name at the moment, Ricardo, from the Institute. And George fancies himself an amateur philosopher. He has a work called Views from an Amateur Philosopher. And after we got done with a surprising 2-hour, 20-minute conversation, we all kind of understood that we had just started something we're probably going to want to do once a month, and sit and just expound upon these topics to which he has put so much time and research. And Rick, you're back now, but I'd started the thought that you're giving me vibes of what I'd had with my guest yesterday, which is the need for possibly something more regularly scheduled, where we sit. And again, the other guy, we said once a month. month and sort of dive into all of this expertise and knowledge you have on these topics that are so critical and relevant right now for all of us interested in North America.
I'm open to it.
And welcome back from your break.
And Rick, this is a point that I don't know how to explain, and I know that you are more than capable of doing so. That is, I was trying to explain Jason. I can explain the relation between 1 to 6% of ore extracted is copper.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you have tons and tons and tons of slag
Mm-hmm.
taken from the mine, because only 1 to 6% of that material will be copper, and it requires treatment. What I can't explain to them is the process that you know so well of what is being added, how many wood was required to produce certain amount of copper, and what would that mean to the forests of the old world, and all the resources that will be required in terms of processing the amount of copper that is found in the archaeological record.
Hold that. I mean, keep that. I want to add mine. So you've got your direction from two of us, and because I don't want you to have to tell me that you have to go before we do go a little bit, and we'll circle back at the end to line of sight and sound long distance
We'll go
communication
after.
amongst
Yeah,
native North
we'll go
Americans.
after. Yeah.
Yeah. So now proceed with Ricardo, and that's where I want to maybe wrap this with.
The amount of flux will reflect. I'm sorry. The amount of slag will reflect both the weight, mass, and volume of everything that came out of the ore that was not copper. And when you take these percentages, let's say it's 1%, and then nowadays they're mining 0.5% and still making a profit.
Wow.
Let's say it's 3%, because that's more common. Then 97% of whatever they mined became the crap that they piled on the ground someplace, plus a little bit that they used as flux. Let's say that they had 97%, they had 3% ore. They'd have to add about that much weight of flux, or a little more, to actually get that weight of copper clean and extract it from the ore. So that means that whatever flux they added into it, they needed that much more fuel to melt it all down. And the fuel, of course, at that time they had animal oils, animal fats, vegetable oils, and wood. So they had more conifers than they had deciduous, which burns fast, burns hot, but boy, did you need a lot.
Right. Yeah, you did. Yep.
So the amount of tonnage will vary, of course, with the percentage of ore. But what you usually find is wherever they find that ore, usually up in the mountains, they only have conifers. And most of the extraction sites are near or above the tree line on the mountains, except in a few cases, Tuscany cypress, because it's closer to the coast.
Right.
So generally, you used every tree in sight to get a tiny bit of piece of refined. Does that help, Ricardo?
Yeah,
that was brilliant. Yeah. I mean, so it further paints the picture for our audience of this juxtaposition of what the copper age and culture was, as we understand it in the old world, versus
and what it
these
did to the
large
environment.
chunks of pure copper.
Yeah, and what it would do to
Correct.
the
All the
environment.
costs.
Yeah, well, there's a
All the
human
cost
cost.
involved for that culture.
Right. Now, if we go a little bit further, and he had one more question on that, and that is, what did they add to the copper to achieve what they wanted? And I have to go to Ötzi's act.
perfect.
Ricardo and I have talked about this
Ricardo
a great deal.
introduced me. Yeah, Ricardo loves this. He first introduced me to it the other day. Yeah, this is great.
So the analysis of the metallurgy of Ötzi's act says that its main contaminant, if you will, is arsenic, and that lead was.
So let's give everybody context. Do it proper for us, Rick. Let's start us with this artifact is a small copper, roughly axe head.
3 inches long,
And
an
let's
inch and a half,
start us with
quarter
where
wide.
it was found. And
It was
thank
found
you.
in the Alps, along the Italian-Austrian border. In fact, when they first found him, they didn't know exactly where he was, in which country. 5,300 years ago, this guy was murdered on top of a mountain, basically. And his body was frozen into a glacier and thawed out in 1997, I think, is when the body was discovered. among his possessions, which
Year I
was thrown
graduated
out
high
over
school.
a range of about 60 yards because somebody was chasing him down, apparently. His axe, his copper axe, which was an amazing thing to own 5,300 years ago, apparently.
Hmm.
The main contaminant in the copper of this axe was arsenic. The second most voluminous contaminant, is how they say it, is lead, and the lead isotopes within it were tracked down to the mines of Tuscany. So
And that's why they say that the copper is from Tuscany.
right. But the copper is not necessarily from Tuscany, the lead is. And they didn't address where the arsenic came from either. But that's an interesting phenomenon. The copper assayed out at the axe assayed out at 99.7% copper. Is that the right figure, Ricardo?
Exactly.
Well, that
99.73 is the most.
Yep, I remember. That was
So
it.
the contaminants, the arsenic and the lead, made up the bulk of the remaining mass. My
Yeah, it
contention,
has a little bit of tin, a little bit of
yeah,
silver.
right. But I think those probably came along with the core elements and maybe the mold itself. At any rate, the main contaminant being arsenic, and the fact that Ötzi's system and tissues were soaked with arsenic to the point that it would have killed him eventually.
His hair was full of it.
Yeah. And that means that he'd been doing this for a while when it was in his hair so strong.
Right.
So my contention is this was probably part of his means of making a living, was bending or at least working with the copper and the arsenic to make arsenic bronze.
Mm-hmm.
The metallurgy
Mm-hmm.
shows up as a professional level pure copper when he got it, 99.9 or better, and added both the arsenic to harden it on the edge and the lead to make it melt at a lower temperature. These are things that are still common in metallurgy today, but you won't get the archaeologists to understand that because it doesn't fit their paradigm. It does not fit their dogma at all.
And that was an art.
Uh,
It was a rare art for the time because his axe, from my studies, was 30% harder, at least at the edge, than a simple copper melted
Right.
into a
The great
mold
thing about arsenic
piece.
bronze is it hardens itself as you use it, but doesn't over harden to the point of it being broken.
Exactly.
wow, interesting. Talk about
And he
technology.
wasn't,
I mean,
and the guy or the people that killed him didn't took the axe from him.
right. It was found with him.
And according to
They were
Rick, and
after.
Rick
They were after something else,
And
huh?
Rick told me that it was quite personal because the people not only was shot at close range, right, Rick? You can continue as the shaft was removed.
Right. Yeah, they shot it.
Yeah, elaborate. How did he die? This an early murder was. Talk to us. What were the circumstances? Give us the
Well, he was shot in the
CSI.
back with a.
Homicide unit shows up.
Well, yeah, he was shot in the back with an arrow. The arrowhead, the point, is still in him. It has not been extracted, but the shaft was not with
Mm-hmm.
him. They extracted the shaft. He was shot above the tree line. Wood was a valuable commodity at that point, more
Ah,
so than the
I see.
stone was.
Yes.
And he had a cut on his on his right hand. He was shot in the back. The arrow went into his left shoulder, severed a big artery, clavicle artery, and he would have bled out in 4 or 5 minutes anyway. But they
Uh-huh.
apparently came to slash his throat, and he stopped the knife. He had a big knife wound on his right hand. He bled out fast though. So yeah, and yes, it was very personal. It was probably
Crime of passion.
yeah. I'm pretty sure there was a woman involved somewhere.
Hmm. So what was the year on our very early example of human passions run amok?
3,300 BCE, closest estimate.
Wow. Wow.
And a point you touched, Rick, that I think it's important for people to understand is the testing through isotopes, every single but the copper. They test the lead, they test the tin, but they never test the copper. And they evaluate the origin of the copper by the origin of the tin or the lead. So if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, lead is used as an ingredient that lowers the melting temperature of an alloy. So whatever is alloyed with lead melted at a lower temperature than pure copper did, or pure anything, actually, because lead is such a low melting temperature. It's used with tin solder to make it melt at 350 degrees instead of whatever it is, almost 900 degrees for regular tin. There are other things that can help do that, and you find them showing up in some of the very early artifacts, bismuth being one of them, because it'll lower melting temperature as well, quite a bit. The metallurgy, these parts of metallurgy were understood 5,000 years ago. And yet, the archaeologists will have us believe that 4,400 years ago, they were still carving all the blocks of the Great Pyramid with pure copper, which did not happen. But
No, did not. It simply did not. We're not trying to be ludicrous. No, that didn't happen.
But
yeah,
it might
what?
explain why El Wadi is the only place in the old world where producing copper higher than 96%, 96.6, 96.7%, because they're trying to make it as pure as possible to then create as best pieces they could.
Right, but they're making it from malachite. And when you
Yes.
go measure the volume of the slag and whatnot, they didn't make all that much of it.
No.
The trench is a 1/4 mile long, 4 feet wide, give or take, and about 3 feet deep. And the amount of malachite that they think they got out of it would make, you did the figures on this, Ricardo. Do
Yeah,
you recall?
it's merely regional. The area would consume all of that copper, and well, they were still importing copper for their needs. So
Some experimental archaeology on cutting the stone block as they're configured, the granite blocks, mind you, in the Great Pyramid,
Hmm.
because
Yeah, the
limestone.
soft stuff, sure.
Yeah, no, no.
no, you see,
They had
that's
a lot of
No,
limestone.
limestone.
I know.
Oh, it's being ironic. Yeah.
They also
I'm
had,
sorry, the sarcasm, I guess.
yeah,
I did not make obvious
right,
enough.
and
Yeah.
well, but it's not the hardest thing in the pyramids either. But having said that, the experimental archaeology went to cut granite with a copper saw using, and when I say saw,
Hmm.
it's not actually the copper doing the cutting. The copper is moving sand across the cut, and the sand
Oh,
does
I
the cutting.
see.
And there's some
It's
evidence that
copper
they use
sandpaper.
pure carborundum in a couple of places too, but nobody accepts that they could extract pure carborundum.
Uh,
And in doing that
Pure
action with
what?
the
Pure
copper
yacht? I didn't
saw,
understand, Rick.
there's a little bit of evidence that they use pure carborundum in a couple of places to do the sawing.
Oh, carborundum. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the copper saw or conveyor, if you want to call it that, however, even using,
Sandpaper works for me.
yeah, but with copper as the backing. Yes, that's a very good analogy.
Exactly.
So
Copper sandpaper, right.
even at that rate, using the sand to do the cutting, they would wear out about 2 pounds of copper for each block, and it would simply
Sure.
go away.
Well, the heat, right? When the heat would probably start playing a part, I would imagine, with the
Even if
soft
they
copper.
cooled it, even if they did it in such a slow manner that it didn't build up any frictional heat, it still consumed it because
Okay.
sand is still doing the same action on the
The
copper and
that it's doing
faster.
on the stone.
Yeah, yeah. So the experimental archaeology says that, what was it, 2.8 million blocks estimated in the Great Pyramid, and if you take 2 pounds
Hmm.
for each one of them,
2 pounds of copper per block. Okay.
then they didn't take all that out of that trench,
Huh.
or out of all
I
of
see where
Egypt,
you're
or out
going.
of
Yeah.
all of Africa, for that matter.
The massive amount of copper that would have been consumed in the process of cutting these blocks with said copper tools,
Right.
implementations, and technology.
Precise.
Right, and for instance, I don't know if the Egyptians had that or wherever the people was that we call Egyptians. But if you go to the temples around Indonesia, Cambodia, and all of that, we know, although I only saw this in one or two papers, with all none of the others point, is that they used like a piece of metal or wood, and they stick like a diamond to the tip in order to cut the stone exactly as they wanted. It still doesn't explain how 100 figures are exactly the same, right? But it explains how they could shape such hard rock without having the mineral to do it, as the archaeologists say, because there was these diamond tips to take that off the stone. I don't know how to explain it
But
well because
without
it was a
power
long time.
tools to move that diamond,
Yes,
how did they get
I
thousands
don't
of
know because
examples? But
The RPMs required.
oh yeah,
and it's perforated. Some of those statues have holes that go from one side to the other of the
yeah,
stone. So you
right.
explain
And
that to
drill
me
marks,
because
and they have helical drill marks through them, particularly the Peruvian and some of the Aztec.
Hmm,
But we're talking
hmm,
particularly about Egypt, so I'm going to move north just a little
Egypt.
bit from Giza and go out to Alexandria, where once stood, and this is my transition to line of sight, once stood the lighthouse of Alexandria. And it was, and anybody who doesn't believe me, go check for yourself. This thing stood taller than the Gateway Arch at St. Louis. And it could be seen day or night about 100 miles out to sea. And that wasn't because there were rocks in the harbor. And it wasn't just to guide people to the harbor. It was also to communicate
right,
information out. They probably couldn't see it coming back,
right,
but
right.
they could
Burp,
broadcast the
burp,
signal.
burp, burp, burp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
precisely like that. Now, I don't know how
yeah.
much time we've got left, but I'm going to transition from Alexandria to Scipio Africanus, who started just west of
Well,
Alexandria.
Rick, I'll tell you, look, we've got, roughly as much time as you do. We like to try to keep these in 2-hour chunks, not so much for our interest, but because we want to make sure whatever our guest is putting out, the audience does indeed consume, as well. But our interest and ability to go on kind of
Yeah,
goes with
we still
yours.
have
If we
15,
go
20 minutes at
Okay,
ease.
I
we
could,
could even cut it into 2 episodes, so we're here until right now, until you need to go, man.
well,
Are you transitioning now to sort of North American communication? Is that where we're
we're going
leading?
to get there. Yeah. We're going to start in Africa, though,
Okay,
because the
perfect.
Romans, Scipio Africanus, when he laid siege to Carthage, he had with him, it's kind of hard to say whether he was a friend, a tutor to Scipio's children, um, or a hostage or a slave, whatever you want. He was a hostage, technically. His name was Polybius. His father was a petty king in Greece, and Polybius was a hostage under Pax Romana. At any rate, Polybius is also the only eyewitness account we have to the siege of Carthage. And of course, it was written from the Roman point of view because, well, at this point, he was essentially Roman. Pardon me. So in that account, he tells us that he taught Scipio's legions how to use a line of sight communication system based on a Greek system. But in this case, it used the Latin alphabet instead of the Greek alphabet. And actually, they used both. They
Hmm.
also used a cipher, display cipher within each of the, because
Hmm.
Carthaginians were smart. Oh, by the way, they had their own line of sight system. And the Romans were doing their best to try to decipher it, never did complete.
Right.
Possibly because what we look at as
Let
an
me.
alphabet of the Carthaginians was actually not an alphabet, it was a syllabary. However, Polybius told us exactly how they did it, keystroke by keystroke. So they set up a matrix, I should say an array, 5 by 5. 5 letters, I'm sorry, 5 rows, 5 columns. Yeah, that's only 25. But
Okay.
they didn't use they didn't have I and J exactly. But they used I and J on the same square. So if I said 2, 3, series of flashes, 2 flashes, 3 flashes, and you go
I
through,
go to my 5 by 5
right?
with
So
your flashes,
second
right?
row, third column is 8.
Yep. Okay.
2,
And now
4,
I get some more flashes,
right? 2,
right?
4 will be I. So
Okay, on my 5 by 5, I'm with you now. So if I've got a 5 by 5 chart on my end, you've got one on your end, and we have any methodology for which sight can be used over distance, then we can communicate quite
right.
clearly and readily.
Yeah, the technology is actually very easy. It can be as simple as a lantern with a louver on it. It can be a mirror in the daytime.
Right.
And
And what fills in the squares don't have to be letters, right? They could be symbols as understood by any culture throughout all of recorded history.
well, in that case, they can only have 25 of them. But in North America,
I see. I see.
yeah. So before we get to North America, however, when we go back and we look at the academic view of the Ogham writing system, or Ogham, depending on how you
Hmm.
want, they'll tell you that it was invented in the 1st century AD and used for the next 4 centuries. Well, that might make sense if they were intercepting Roman signals and just jotting down a number of flashes, because they never have more than 5 branches on the Ogham. Anyway, jumping to North America and the writing systems and signaling systems that may or may not have been in use here. I can't prove it all right now.
So now we're
Give me
back
some
to
time.
examining do they fit the grid with the language patterns we know in North America? All
And
right,
the
I'm with
answer
you.
to that is no, not in a 5 by 5. Because look, I'm going to use
Okay.
Cherokee as the only living example of a writing system among Native Americans. And the history will tell you that a guy by the name of Sequoyah invented this writing system in 1819. By
Okay.
1823, the Cherokee nation had its own newspaper in its own written language, in its own spoken language, as a writing symbol. However, they didn't use an alphabet. They used a syllabary. So each symbol of 84,
Hmm.
84 symbols represented a specific syllable of their spoken language. You can't fit that in a 5 by 5.
So is syllabary, make sure I'm following you. Is syllabary something according to, what's the terminology for the language that you use to represent how to say a word? Oh, it's slipping my mind right now. There's an entire language we used in stage phonetic. Thank you. Is that sort of like, is that what am I thinking correctly?
Yes, yeah, you're on the right. Okay, among native languages, you'll have a consonant sound followed by a specific, we'll call it a vowel sound. Da, na, sa.
Okay, sure. Uh-huh.
Each of those has its own symbol. However,
Understood.
there are 84 such symbols. And each of those syllables can have a different meaning depending upon context.
All right.
It starts getting difficult for European brains.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you have, say, a 3-layer array, a 3-dimensional array, if you want to put it that way, instead of a 2-dimensional
A
array,
cube.
yes, then you have 125 selections of 1 through 5.
Okay. Okay.
Then you can use all 84 of your syllabary symbols plus 10 numerical,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps more,
Mm-hmm.
plus context 1 through 5. Now you can convey one hell of a lot of information in a 5 by 5 by 5
Okay.
matrix.
So
This is This is easy for
So
Rick
I have
because it's
I
in his
have to
background.
number. I have to number. No, I'm thinking through, right? I'm seeing the line of sight communication. Now, if I've got a cube, right, I'm going to have to not only give the row and the column, but I'm going to have to give
Yeah.
a horizontal, whatever your word is, for the depth aspect of this chart, right? And will there be then what, a fourth number? Because once I'm going row, column, and I'm going depth, I'm going to need some other, right, vector point.
No,
Is
no,
that
you don't,
correct?
because you've got
You see where I'm going? How many vector points do I need to communicate?
125. Oh, vectors? 3 vectors.
You see where I'm going? If I want to get you to assemble on this cube, how many vector points do I need to
You
communicate
need
to you?
3 sets of flashes. So instead of 2, 3,
Three. Thank
2,
you.
4, it'd be 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, or whatever the combination would be.
Understood. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, man, you've basically, okay, here's what we've got, Vince. This is technology. We have a computer. We have a computer of sorts, right? We have not this 3 dimension. What I mean by that is what I'm trying to wrap my head around is the volume of possibilities that one sees when you see this form of communication, right? It goes well beyond what you could just call Morse code, right? It's a tech, it's like a computer is all I'm trying to say,
It's a program.
in what it's capable of doing.
Right. It is the software version of the program. But the hardware
Thank you.
version,
Yeah, there you go.
the hardware version is simple. It's a mirror. Or in some cases, there was also a receiver piece.
Right.
The receiver piece was a tube typically made of stone with a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch hole in the middle and then an inch and a half on the outside, about 10, 12 inches long. You can find thousands of them in various collections around the country. The biggest single collection I've seen was at Chillicothe, Ohio, in the Hooverkaus Johnson Museum, or Johnson Hooverkaus Museum. But if you go to Cairo, the Cairo
So,
Museum has dozens of examples of the exact same artifact, and no archaeologist can tell you what it's for. Well, I think I know.
Well, who
It's a
are you, Rick?
it's
Who
line
are you, Rick, to
line
say
of
those things?
line of sight.
yes,
Isolating my line of sight on my point of flash or
correct.
communication.
Isolating, yes, by means of a geometrical filter in optical terms that cuts out everything else in your field of vision except the source.
It's not like a looking glass. It's not a magnifier, but I would imagine that what you're doing by isolating
It's
all the
also not a
sources,
magic mirror, but
you're increasing the effectiveness of it, and you might even be increasing the possible range for which you could maintain effective communication by isolating on that point.
yes, it also maintains your attention better than if you have distraction.
Exactly. That's where I was going with efficiency.
Yeah,
It makes the whole process more efficient and even more powerful, to use
correct.
computing terms or whatever
Now,
technical terms.
back to the whole mirrors thing, because we got 8 minutes or so left.
Yeah. So Rick, again, let me give a little context as you're wrapping us up and why I wanted you to get us here to this communication between North Americans. And I mean, personally, so as I start walking myself into confronting what I was finding on the ground, and here for reference, I'm on the Mobilla story, right? I find what is definitively the site of Mobilla, and then I start exploring around to find the towns, find what all I can learn about the earthworks. What I come up against is I'm here in central Alabama, right? I'm well below the plateau. In fact, Montgomery, Prattville, where Mobilla was, is right where the ancient sea line would have been, right? The shallow sea. So it just dives down to Montgomery and then it's swamp. So you come up to this general geographic region right at the Alabama River. Now, this landscape does not betray any type of altitude changes. When you're in this landscape, generally, if somebody said, "What is it?" you're going to say flat, right? You're just going to say flat. Well, as I start exploring, the town of Prattville and all these areas around the Alabama River, what I start noticing, Rick, is finding these high points, right? So I come across these high points, and then I suddenly realize that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I find myself in a high point, and I can see geographically 12, 13 miles over to the next high point, which is a impact crater in Wetumpka, Alabama, would have been the edge of Coosa and Tuscaloosa's territory. I can, keep going. I'll come across another high point where I realize now I can see that high point. Now I can see all the way to Montgomery. Keep going again, and I'm at a further high point 20 miles that way by a friend. I look back. There's those high points
That's
identified.
how it
I
works.
look over to my right. There's another high point. And so when I started seeing that, my mind's going, all right, they were here. Any people that were here and the numbers that DeSoto told us were here, they would have known this. This would have been a point for communication and observation. And that verified for me, okay, start looking for proof of native presence now. And that's my interest in this and why it really piqued me that you know so much about it.
It's a little bit different in your exact neck of the woods, but most parts of the continent, if you can see a cell tower, you're near one of those high points.
Right.
It's still a line of sight
Right.
communication. A cell tower is a line of sight communications tool. It doesn't see over hill.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway,
That's exactly why when I go to where I film Antediluvian Alabama, Ricardo, in up around Mentone, Alabama. Remember how I described the place to you when I was
Mentone,
trying to
I know
sell it to
Mentone.
you? So this okay. Well, then you and I have a lot to talk about, and you are definitely going to be a recurring factor here for us, Mister Rick. Yeah, Mentone's a magical place,
I've
and
heard the
most
footsteps in
beautiful.
the
I
haunted
first thing I
hotel.
noticed when I got, oh really, Rick, we've got so much to talk about, dude. So anyway, the cell service in that area is shit because it's just all of a sudden, you're on top of this hill slash mountain. Yeah, and the cell
Well,
can't
actually, you're
communicate. I see
between
now.
two ridges right there
Yeah, well,
in town. But
when you're on top of Lookout Mountain,
oh no. On top of Lookout Mountain, it's on top. But if you're in Mentone itself, you're between two high points. You get outside of town.
north and south.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
And if you look
yes,
north, you can
yes.
see a cell tower.
Ricardo, please take note, and I'm going to let him keep going. But we've got to do a watch along with my antediluvian Alabama stuff and Mister Rick here. Now that I know he knows the area too. This is great.
Yeah, and
Well,
Rick, tell me if
the
I'm wrong.
reason I know the area is because inside DeSoto State Park is a feature called Welsh Cave.
Yes, that's where I do my filming.
I've been
Is
there 4
DeSoto
times.
State Park.
And there'll be a
Yeah,
lot to
yeah.
discuss there.
Yeah.
Yes, the ruins of the antediluvian
Yeah, but
civilization is what you're looking at. Yeah, this is amazing. All right, continue on.
and
As
Rick,
always, I told you, Rick, we're just going to keep finding things that we can
Yeah.
keep talking about.
if we
So,
look
This is what I
if you
love.
look at the work of one of the unsung heroes, just like Rick here with us, of all this American history, is Jen Shears. And from
oh, yeah.
my perception of his work, when he was mapping and surveying and detailing our orientations and everything about this mounds and hills that were considered sacred, he realized that they were all on line of sight from one to another. So they allowed communication from almost one point of the territory to the far ends of the territory. So a message could be transmitted in a matter of hours. So I don't know if this helps you, Jason, in terms of how they knew that De Soto would arrive at that place led by the brother of Chucalusa, but they could communicate much faster than they could travel to get to the other point.
See, that's the other thing. It is true, Ricardo. When you're on these high points, you realize that you could have been observing the behavior the whole time. You could, from these high points, you can see the entire territory. They would have been able to see Tuscaloosa and DeSoto, where they were going, confirming that Tuscaloosa was successful in keeping DeSoto on plan, and on exactly. Yes,
On
Ricardo.
Tuscaloosa's plan, but that's a whole different part of the story. Uh,
It really was, man. It really was his plan, man. He made them think they crossed a river when they didn't even cross the fucking
yeah.
river. Is
Yes.
beautiful, man.
So the North American version of the line of sight, as you noticed, high point to high point to high point, thousands of points. If you go on the
Yes, sir.
USGS topo maps, you'll find some of these marked as signal points or signal hills. The government knows.
Signal Hills.
They know, but they won't talk about it. They simply will not. And getting back to the USGS, the second director of the USGS was a guy by the name Major Retired John Wesley Powell, U.S. Army, lost an arm at Shiloh. After the war, he got in a boat, first a pirogue, then a canoe, then back in a pirogue, and he, by himself, went down the Colorado River. One-armed man going down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. And he was sponsored for this. When he got back from that 1868 trip, I think it was, they said, well, where are the photographs? And he said, well, I didn't take a photographer. Well, you got to go back. And he did. Took a photographer and a few other folks and went down the Colorado River again. And he, because of those two actions and the fact that he lost an arm at Shiloh, made him what I call a cookie cutter hero. There are a lot of people lost limbs in the army, but there weren't a lot of people that went exploring afterwards. So he became, he became this cookie cutter
Bravo.
hero and was named the second director of the USGS. While he was in that position, he wrote up, proposed a project called the Bureau of Ethnicity for the then still pretty new Smithsonian Institution. So the Bureau of Ethnicity was established on the suggestion and direction, if you want to call it that, it was his direction. While he was still director of the USGS, he was also double-headed as the director of the Bureau of Ethnology. So in that capacity, we're talking 1870s, 80s, 90s, he got, well, actually by the 80s, he had ceased being director of USGS, but he still had the influence. He could tell the railroads where to build. And in doing so, I can show you 5 documented sites that were deliberately destroyed as a result of those actions.
Of course.
In his writings, now he never graduated college, by the way, but he's always cited by academics on the idea that he declared that Native Americans never worked in stone. They never had the ability to write. They never had true civilization. So those things were written, and therefore it was gospel. And it has
unfortunately.
It has taken until our future from now to prove him wrong. And by the way, the natives are trying to do that by themselves. I think they could use a little help. But we'll see. But the writing says, not just the writing, sending it across open air. When Montezuma was a captive of the Spaniards, his scrying mirror, a sage or oracle tool, a scrying mirror, you could look into this and see the future or see events. You could be a psychic.
Sure. Some sort of magical tool of lore,
with magic. They got signals over these mirrors. But
that reminds me of Preston John, who at the center
very
of his
much
city,
so,
had
yeah.
The magic mirror on top of his huge structure that allow him to see what's going on. That's what it says. Allows him to see what's going on in all of his lands. So by means of communication, that makes much more sense than magic.
So that particular scrying mirror allegedly is now in the Tower of London, and somehow it was acquired from the Spanish by John Dee under Elizabeth the First. It's in the Tower of London, and it is made of obsidian, volcanic glass, and it is optically flat. That technology did not exist 500 years ago, according to all the wisdom, and yet it is optically flat.
Wow. What's the you said lava obsidian. What's the technical term for lightning generated? You said volcanic. I know from this, you call it what?
Lignite. Sand is fused into glass by light.
By lightning, yes, sir. All right, so I don't call that obsidian, even though it around here it gets called obsidian because native artifacts and all are made of it, and I find it, all over the place around here in these creeks, especially in overturned trees.
Black obsidian? Yeah, that came from Yellowstone to Alabama.
Say that again. Where?
It came from Yellowstone and was traded to Alabama.
Roger that.
So it's
highly reflective.
Yes, yeah. When it's ground flat or polished flat, it is a mirror finish. Well, it's glass, but it's black glass. It's volcanic glass.
Right. Yeah.
And what process would require, with their means, to make it absolutely flat.
Shit, just break it in half. Oh, make it flat. I thought you
Yeah,
said
it
reflective.
doesn't
Go
clay
ahead.
flat. No, it had to be ground and polished flat. So if we do it
Mm,
today, and we do it with optical glass, just let's say borosilicate crown would be my favorite, but it's really hard to get nowadays. You take two of them and you get them basically, shaped a little bit, and then you grind them together. You turn them over, you grind them together. You turn them over, you grind them together. It's got polishing compounds when you get down to that. And 40 hours, you can make a 6-inch telescope mirror that way. I know because
40
I've done it.
hours.
you have not.
I made a 6-inch telescope. Yeah, but it came as a kid. It's not like I
No
invented anything.
shit.
Yeah,
No, I understand. I'm just look, the sound that I just let out there with "you have not" was just impressiveness that you've logged the experience to actually, have that behind you. That's all. That's very
yeah,
impressive to me personally.
it's not. People think of it as high science. Well, the high science is in how you test it or correct it for any flaws. The basic actions
Hmm.
are actually very simple. If you have, and one of the things that they would have used in this process was pitch. So they had to be able to process pitch. Well, we know that they did that. They did a lot of that. That's how they fixed their points to their shafts. So they had to pitch.
Mm.
They had you had to have a grinding compound. They had all of it. You name it, it was all available in the American carborundum.
Right,
Almost anything you can imagine. They could, but making it flat is the key in making
right,
a parabolic reflector is a different process, but the actions are the same. If that
correct.
and
It
and
did.
and the
This
time
is this is
involved
all
would have
helped
been
to
about
me.
the same.
And so Ricardo, gentlemen, we're approaching 2 hours and 11 minutes. This is getting close to where I will need to extract myself from the conversation, really against my will.
We'll do it again.
Sure.
Well, here's what I want to say. If nobody else has a continuation, I don't want to be interrupting any points. Is where I'm going. So if you've got a continuation, please keep going. But what I want to plant some seeds here for not only us, but for our audience, who I hope has enjoyed this conversation as much as I've enjoyed being a part of it. First, I want to say, Rick, I'd just like to say thank you, man, and I don't just mean for your time here. My experience here today has been much like my experience in some of my favorite history classes, some of my favorite lectures I might experienced in my lifetime. It's just, I'm grateful for your knowledge. I'm grateful for your enthusiasm, for your passion. And where that leads me is, Ricardo, we did a thing over on our other podcast, not ours, but the girls have a podcast called Universe Unveiled. And the reason Ricardo and I started kind of doing this together was they did something they called a crew, right? A crew session, which was once in a while they would bring us in because of our various areas of knowledge and expertise, and together examine some other topic. So something that sort of bubbles in my head is you mentioned Vince Barrows, so what I'm envisioning, if of course this seed lands well with you, is recording, getting Vince Barrows on or anybody else with some work and bringing you in for your obvious depth of knowledge on not only these myriad, technical items, but just the general North American history that you have just as within your grasp. You're pulling this stuff out of the ether. So I would be very interested to further that conversation if you are about having this just be something recurrent, because I'm getting so much from what you have to offer, and I know the people watching will.
Yeah, Vince and I work well together anyway. So, well, thank you for having me.
No, it was as usual, Rick. You're a fountain of information, a fountain of wisdom, and it's always a pleasure speaking with you, which I had the privilege to do in person for several hours, and I keep learning each time I speak with you. So it is, as always,
Well, I hope
amazing
we
to
get
be
that
here.
opportunity again, Ricardo.
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
In
I
person.
think we certainly will. I mean, honestly, Honestly, Rick, this is just noble stuff you're doing, and let me just say, I'm honored to have been part of this conversation. And so, most assuredly, I would like to. You can speak with Ricardo, and we'll see how easy these things are to put together. I would love to keep learning from you, and I'm sure our audience would as well.
Jason,
Rick?
next time, look up Prince Madoc and Mobile Bay.
Prince Madoc and Mobile Bay. I've got it. I've got
You
it.
have a topic.
All
You
right.
have a topic.
We have a topic. Okay, so listen, we'll do a quick sign off here. Ricardo, you want to go first with any items that you want to throw at everybody and make sure they know where to find you and your
Absolutely.
work, please, sir.
So, my name is Ricardo Calvario, and I've been, as usual, your host here in Shaman and the Philosopher. Maybe
The ghost with the most,
maybe I'm
appearing as host
I'm
today.
hounding people at
Right.
home. And you can find me at X on Ricardo Calvary 1. You can find me on YouTube as History, Myths, and Legends. And of course, you can find the both podcasts of the Institute. There are ours, The Shaman and the Philosopher, and The Universe Unveiled. So you can all check my two books, The Resonant Earth and Stardust, that are both on Amazon. That I see a lot of people having them, but I don't see any sales on my Amazon account, which is curious.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that amazing? But thank you very much, Rick. And if it's magic, and I believe you have some places you can tell people where they can find you, at least on
Yeah,
X.
besides being a treasure and absolute font of knowledge, let folks know where they can find you and see what else you're up to, please, Rick.
Sure. I'm on Facebook as Rick Osmond. I think it's Rick Osmond 9 or 6. I forget. There seems to be other Rick Osmond. I'm on TikTok as Lost America, and on its now chat box Lemonade as same Lost America. And Lost America is the title of our streaming video series that is expected to be released on Blu-ray the end of this year, give or take. And so I'll be spending a lot of time on the road promoting that at some point. Anyway, that's
Excellent.
Find me. I'm out there. Go find me.
You are on X too, right?
Yes, I'm on X as Rick Silver.
Rick Silver.
Rick Soderville, and we will get these links placed in the video as well. Mr. Rick Osmond, everybody. So I introduced myself at the first. Jason Huffman, Shaman 711, several series, Antediluvian Alabama, and Finding Mobilla. You can get me on YouTube, X, and Rumble. Mr. Osmond, it has been a pleasure today, sir, and I look very much forward and hope we did indeed establish something that we can carry forward for all of us here in this conversation and for the let's just say humanity at large, because what we are doing is bringing the truth of our past to the present, as Ricardo puts it. And as I put it, our best future requires the truth of our past. And I thank you, sir, for your efforts in that endeavor. Go check out our sister podcast, Universe Unveiled. Thank you, everybody. And if you are into these subjects and you're like Rick, you have put time, effort, and toil into them, come see us. And I hope you find what we're all individually finding collectively, which is a home receptive to us and what we bring to the table.
Absolutely. So to all,
thank you, everybody.
a very fond farewell.